believe that they will not sign. I love Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Donald Trump may be an historic figure, but that does not mean he's easy to understand or anticipate. One thing is for sure, though, he has a unique style and form of communication. Could he redefine the presidency? To Crosstalk, what to expect from the Trump presidency, I'm joined by my guest, Michael Flanagan in Washington. He is president of Flanagan Consulting and a former congressman. In New York, we have Hank Scheinkopf. He is a Democratic political consultant as well as a Newsmax contributor. And in St. Louis, we have Ed Martin. He is a former chairman of the Missouri Republican Party as well as a former member of the Republican National Committee. All right, gentlemen, Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Michael, if I could go to you first in Washington, I'm sure you remember the phrase, let Reagan be Reagan, and it worked for him. How about letting Trump be Trump? Will it work for him? Because I'm not sure it is or not, but he's not in office yet. Go ahead, Michael.
I don't think that there's any other way Trump will work other than being Trump. I don't think he really is interested in a mold anywhere else, and I think he's going to go on being Trump. He's going to communicate directly to the people with his Twitter feed and other ways. He's going to work around the press, and I think he's going to be a domestic first, but a foreign policy president very different than the last 8 years and maybe the last 16 years.
Okay, Hank, if I can go to you in New York, how do you reply to that? Because I definitely see the positives of going directly, Twitter, social media, Facebook, and everything else like that. But I see him reacting to everything, and it's, you know, there is the question of how presidential that is, okay? I admire his vigor and I admire his toughness, but, I mean, he's going to have a lot of issues on his plate. I mean, is this what he should be doing? Go ahead.
He is absolutely the non-traditional president. He will be. He is perfect for the period of time that is witnessing the decline of the print press as a means of communicating, and that means less investigative journalism. It means also an electronic community that is largely regulated. I'm talking about television. And he can do whatever he wants with Twitter and the rest. He can communicate directly with the people. But the problem will be what is truth and what is not. And that is the larger question that democracies face.
Okay, it's a very interesting point there. Ed, how about you? Go ahead, jump in. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, yeah, listen, well, Peter, I've got two observations. Number one is on the ride to the studio to talk to you, I heard from a Republican friend of mine, a strategist, and he said, why does Trump have to go after Meryl Streep, you know, in a tweet, you know, when she said something the other night at the Golden Globes? And my answer was sort of what you said. I said, Trump's going to be Trump. And I think that's the fact. I think Hank is right. I think the question, a bigger question is this. Is Donald Trump to media and to communication what we always said Kennedy was to the presidency? You know, after Kennedy, it became about looks, and he changed dramatically how we relate to candidates. Trump is changing. I don't see the next president in 4 or 8 years being able to be anything but accessible. Now, one more thing. Here's what the public loves, and this is a very specific example. When Donald Trump said in an interview that he was asked, should women be punished who have abortions, he said yes. And people went crazy. They said, do they mean jail time and all that stuff? And what Trump did then was back off on Twitter, saying what he meant was it's something that's wrong, and we all know that women suffer because of it and all that, and he backed off. Now, I'm not talking about the substance of that claim. I'm saying that Twitter and the media, for regular folks, not for, Twitter and the use of social media for regular folks is very effective. Trump is very good at making people feel connected to his leadership, and that's very, very different than we've had.
Okay, Hank, you wanted to jump in there. I think it cuts both ways, Ed. I'll go back to that. Hank, you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
He is an entirely new invention, Trump. He has never served in government, never been in the military, has no idea how institutions work. He can run his presidency via his hand. He's the first president in history to be the entire internet president. We don't know what he's going to do, but if the appointments that he's talked about and are trying to get through the Senate are any example, we have a pretty clear sense about what that administration will be about. And it's not going to be one that is of the people, for the people. It'll be of some people and for some people.
Wait, that's
Okay, Michael, go ahead, then we'll go to Ed. Michael, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah. I think that's some great talking points, but I don't think that carries much water. What you're going to see here is a domestic policy that's going to be very thick on jobs. It's going to be very thick on moving forward and revitalizing the economy. And I think that's the cabinet he's built. Yeah. If it's foreign to what we've seen in the last 8 years, yeah, it is. But it's going to be less about Washington, less about New York, too. It's going to be more about the Middle America, more about Main Street rather than Broad Street or Pennsylvania Avenue. And I think that's part of what he brings to this, the end of PC, the end of letting the news media filter his words. And he's going to be one of the guys that you're going to see in the living room.
Okay, Ed, you know, go back to your point here, because you're the one that brought it up here. I mean, I think you're absolutely, all of you are right so far. But, you know, I think that, will this bring the country together, this kind of twitting? Because he's dividing people. You brought up a topic there that is very divisive for many people in America. You know, he wants to be president of all Americans, but the way he is approaching it now as president-elect, he doesn't seem to be reaching across the aisle a whole lot. But maybe because he's feeling he's being attacked. Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Ed. Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
Well, look, look. I think what you're saying, though, is you're describing sort of how we see the majorities and the minorities right now in terms of the social media. Mm-hmm. Every president comes in, and even if they win a landslide, they still have tens of millions of people who are against them, and strongly so. What I think is different is that Trump is accessible in a way that's different. By the way, I want to make a point, 2 points about what Hank said. One is, he says that if you didn't serve in government, you don't know how to run institutions. I mean, this is just the kind of talk that people out in the country say. We're sick of the guys that know how to run the institutions, running them into the ground. The second thing that I would say is this, is that Trump is appointing some really top-notch talent. And when they get in office, I think he's going to give them a lot of room to run. And then he's going to hold them accountable. I mean, this is a guy that's famous for saying you're fired. What's going to happen when Rex Tillerson or Andy Puzder gets on the wrong side of Trump's vision? We're going to see a different kind of leadership style. Some of these guys don't know you're supposed to go quietly into the night, you know, because it's a political appointment. They may say, hey, this is, and I think that's a chance we're going to see something very different. But it's so different than anything we've seen in the last 25 years.
It's definitely different. Hank, you wanted to disagree or clarify something? Go ahead, Hank. Go ahead.
It's different than anything. It's different than anything we have seen. The truth is, there is nothing wrong with people in the private sector getting into government. George Shultz, a great patriot, is a perfect example, having served several presidents and done it well and come from the private sector. That's not the issue. The issue is we have people who want to take apart government per se. Now, some of that may be good, and I'm prepared to give them, and so should every American give them the opportunity to do so. But I look at the balance sheets and the income taxes that we've been seeing reported, the kind of figures that these guys make, who they are and where they come from. They're not in the mainstream of America. They are very much Washington and New York. They are very much from the business community, and there ain't a lot of everybody else. So give them the chance. But by the way, let's see what happens. They don't know the institutions and how they work, but they have an idea about them. Not so good.
Okay, Michael, we're all agreeing that something new is happening before our eyes here. And why not? Because this business as usual model is broken. And that's what the American people said in this last election. We know that through many election cycles, Americans, voters have said they want somebody different. They want something that not the typical politician. Well, they've got it now, okay? So, you know, again, I'm kind of going back and forth with it myself here. But, you know, the old model didn't work. Why don't we try a new one? And he's certainly trying a new one. Go ahead, Michael.
Exactly right.
I don't think it's as new as I would like it to be, or as new as some are describing it. Congress still runs the show in this town. It's the Article I branch of government. It's the first branch of government. It taxes us, it spends our money, and it decides how that gets spread around and who does what with it. And Congress isn't looking for any really radical change, unless you call balancing the budget and things like that radical change. Right. But Congress is really looking for a lot more status quo than change.
Oh. Okay, Ed, you want to jump in?
Go ahead,
Ed. Wait a second. Wait a second. We have a massive shift. I mean, the Republican Party 18 months ago was the party of the Chamber of Commerce, where they wanted open borders and they wanted more trade deals and they pushed for TPP. Now the Republican Party is saying no to TPP, and they may pass the REINS Act. Guys, the REINS Act would sunset almost every regulation, or at least make it so they have to be passed by the House. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, I'm for it, but I think Hank is right. You have to. identify what's going on. The EPA director is going to go in and he's going to change dramatically. He's not going to say, I'll run the EPA better. He's going to shed power over regulating whole aspects of the way we live. Now, I think that's a good thing after 40 years of building the size and scope of government. But it's a major deal. Education. I think you're going to see shredding the education centralization. Obamacare. They're going to repeal Obamacare and block grant stuff to the states. This is a change that we haven't seen or contemplated. Now, maybe he won't do it, but that's what they're talking about.
They're going to do. They're going to. I think they're going to do.
Hank, let me go to Hank
They're
here.
going to do
Hank,
everything. Yeah, they're going to do.
Go ahead, Hank. Go ahead. Continue.
They're going to do everything that you all say they do until they're going to do everything they say they're going to do until the Congress starts polling in individual districts, then the House, and seeing who cares about what and who votes. The truth is, you shred Obamacare, you get rid of entitlements. In many cases, the people that are going to get hurt the worst are people in the heartland, people that voted in declining industrial areas for Donald Trump. I want to see the Congress that doesn't like to get unelected do things that are going to put them out of business. Okay, I don't think so.
Michael, let me go to you before we go to the break here. Is this Donald Trump's GOP?
Yep.
Is this his party now? Because I'm not convinced that it is. Go ahead, Michael.
I don't think it is. I think Ed's partially right with all the excitement that's going to come along, but it's got to go through Congress. The president is not an autocrat. He is, most of this stuff you're talking about has got to work its will through Congress. Congress pays for it. Congress sets the parameters. Congress has oversight. Congress makes the rules. And a lot of this stuff is not going to get through the Senate. Right. I'm sorry, just McConnell is going to have more of the same, the poor man. He's going to have a tough time. And he's going to want to move Supreme Court justices, and he's going to have to make deals to get that done. So this is going to be a very difficult time to get stuff through Congress. As for Obamacare, I would tell you, this 20 million people on the thing, I want to take just 1 second about Obamacare here. There are millions and millions and millions of people who are in the exchanges because they were forced there because they lost their
I have to jump in here. I have to jump in here, and we're going to go to a short break. And after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on what to expect from a Trump White House. Stay with RT.
I'm Tom Harpin, and I'll give you what the mainstream media can't, the big picture.
There's been no charges filed against
And when you question more, you find what you're looking for.
This is the legislative branch of the parliament.
We'll go deeper, investigate, and debate, all so you can get the big picture.
People may have different choice. Maybe they're more interested in having their ego in a product, okay? Say, I make shoes, people identify with a profession, then have higher standards of living, something that fits economic textbooks better, but not their ego.
By October 2006, we were in Iraq. I'm here for a reason. I'm protecting America. All the lies.
We know there's an arrest warrant for her for deportation. She will be arrested when she crosses the border, when she's forced out next week.
And I call on our Prime Minister to do what is right and stop the deportations.
War resisters, welcome here! War resisters, welcome here!
They were volunteers into the military of a democratic country, and that's being taken into consideration by our IRB and our courts, which is why to date, none of these applications for refugee status have been successful, I think.
It's important to allow the war resistors to stay in Canada because fundamentally we do not agree with George Bush war on Iraq and or in Afghanistan.
I love you.
Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. To remind you, we're discussing what to expect from a Trump White House. Okay, I'd like to go back to Hank in New York. I mean, it was already mentioned on this program the scandal that is it remains with Meryl Streep in the awards a few days ago, and you know. Trump's critics called him intolerant and mentioned the usual litany of things here. But when I look at the Congress that Michael keeps reminding us about, is that they don't seem to be in any kind of cooperative mood whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it seems to be, you know, when Barack Obama came into power, they made sure he got his cabinet picks in their chairs from day one. I think it was up to 9. And now they're doing this to reverse. I mean, obstructionism. I mean, is this really what we need right now? I mean, I know they lost. I know they're hurting. Then they're smarting, okay? They need to go back and they need to figure out what went wrong instead of just blaming Russia or, you know, the media or something like that. But they don't seem to be in the mood to move forward. This was a change election. I think everybody knows that. This is a change election. Now we need a changed presidency. So please address the Democrats. Go ahead, Hank.
I think it's idiotic, and I've never believed for 20 seconds or 5 seconds or even 1 second, a nanosecond, that people who engage in movie acting and creative arts ought to be telling people what public policy is in any area but that. And I don't know where they get the gall to go and attack the president. The truth here is that the American people made a decision. The Electoral College is the device we use. And by the way, he's the president, so let's move forward. What Michael said is most important. The will of the people isn't generally carried out to the president. The will of the people is carried out through the checks and balances in the Senate and the House of Representatives. My betting is a lot of what Trump wants he's not going to get. Why? Because the Senate won't allow it to happen. Okay? He's not going to get the things he wants. And if there's a hint of scandal, they will turn on him almost immediately.
Okay, Ed, if I can go to you, but I mean, Trump will do exactly what Barack Obama did and use executive orders here because one party in Congress wants to be, you know, but see, this whole mentality of obstructionism is hurting democracy, denigrating democracy, okay? And that's why, I mean, you know, I think so. Well, you know, if you're going to have just presidents using executive orders, then what's the whole point of having, you know, checks and balances? Go ahead, Ed.
Well, it's maybe the only, you know, it's maybe a bad system, but it's the best in the world, right? Our Republican democracy. But 2 observations. Look, Meryl Streep, one thing is there are people that are delusional in the country about Trump. And one of the things that we have to do, and I think RT's done it and other stations, is talk concretely about his policies and who the guy is. I mean, Meryl Streep was a delusional. That was like in the bubble. But I think everybody on this call, I mean, on this discussion right now, is you just finally got your finger on it. They're all wrong so far. Trump is going to be able to appoint more judges than any incoming president in a long, long time. He's going to get them through. They're going to be center right. They may not be all the ones he wanted, but he's going to roll back executive orders all the way back to the WTO entry of China. I mean, if he wants, he can go back. I mean, he can't undo that in 2001. But my point is, on his priorities, he has more power because of the centralization of power in the executive. Now, I'll give Michael credit. I think he said it. We need an Article I Congress to rise up. I don't see that in them. I think they're finding ways to roll over and keep moving. If they defund Planned Parenthood, something I'd like, that'll be a breakthrough. As Hank knows, that will cause the left to go wild. So I think we're in for something, as you say, live by the pen and the phone, die by the pen and the phone, and then, by the way, the momentum of the Scalia appointment. I'm told once Sessions is confirmed, the Scalia replacement will be named so that they weren't competing. We're going to see this happen in a month or 2, not in 6 months. It's amazing.
Yeah, Michael addressed that because it seems to me, again, looking at the Twitter feed, is that, you know, we have a man that is not youthful in age, let's all admit that, but he has a vigor of a very young man and the people around him. Now, I'm not waving the flag one way or another because some of his appointments I'm a little thoughtful about, but I think, you know, just giving the guy a chance here because he seems to be genuinely willing to go out there and roll up his sleeves and start work from day one. He's working already, okay? I mean, but my biggest question is, can he unite people with his style and the things that he's already said? This is very, very important because if he can't, then we're going to have more deadlock, and the country and the world doesn't need that. Go ahead, Michael.
When working with the Congress, you need to be able to work with the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader. The House Minority Leader doesn't matter, whoever it is, because the House is an autocratic institution and the rules give the victories to the winners of the votes, and the winners of the votes are always the majority. The Senate is another matter. The minority has enormous power. So what have you got there? You've got McConnell, you've got Ryan, and you've got Schumer. All three are deal makers. Reid was not a deal maker. Pelosi is not a deal maker. Right. What you got are three people who are all willing to make the deal if the deal is right. Trump is a world-class deal maker. And so you're going to have trading all over the place of all sorts of things. And if Trump approaches this like Reagan did, with a set of priorities and a whole bunch of stuff I can live without, but we'll talk about, the deals are going to get made and the work is going to get done. And I think that's how this Congress is going to work with this president. You're going to have the same kind of thing you had with Clinton and the Republican Congress. You're going to have a lot of good stuff done with everybody trying to take credit for successful programs. And I think that's how this is going to work out in the end. But it's going to be rough going in the beginning because everybody's going to be pawing, trying to see what their limits are. Schumer's going to be tough. Ryan's going to be tough. And Trump's going to be tough. So it'll be rocky in the beginning, but it's going to settle into some good hard work.
Hank, if I can go to you in New York, I mean, again, Ronald Reagan's name has been mentioned again on this program here. You know, and I think historically they look at his presidency, he had 5 priorities and then everything else he delegated, okay? Do you think that's what Trump's going to do, and should he do that? Go ahead, Hank.
Should he do that? He's got to come up with some priorities that make some sense. He's kind of all over the place to date. And how this all works out is yet to be seen. But I want to go back to something Michael said. It is absolutely accurate to presume that the House and the Senate will do what they have to do within the scope of how they're organized and what their powers are. But remember, the House wants to get reelected. You know, the elections are 2 years down the road. It's not likely the Republicans can lose the majority, but it is likely that they can take some hits, which tends to happen in the midterm election for any president of an incumbent party. And to do so means that they're going to have to take some risks. They don't want to go down in numbers. And ultimately, getting elected is what drives the House and the Senate both. They're not going to take much risk, and that's the difference here. Trump's arguments are a lot, in many ways, very risky. If the constituency that elected him and that brought that Republican Congress in, and they're pretty clear to see who they are, tends to feel any kind of pain from whatever they're doing, you're going to see them back off. Now, that means that some things are just not going to happen.
Okay, Ed, let me go to you in St. Louis, because during the entire time Barack Obama was president, the Democratic Party declined under his 8 years. Okay, what does Donald Trump have to do to keep his coalition together? And I think that's key, because oh my God, he's not even inaugurated yet, and somebody mentioned the midterms. I can't believe it, but okay, you know, well, really, you guys, it's like, you know, a 24/7 circus. Okay, it's called reality. Ed, what does he have to? What does he have to? Because what I've thought of is he needs to create a movement, not just a coalition, but a movement. Can he do that? Go ahead, Ed.
Well, he has a movement, and I think Hank and I agree with Hank on this. And I would say this is where Trump is right and Ryan's wrong. If you go in and try to change Medicare and Social Security like Ryan has wanted to do, you'll lose elections. You'll lose seats in the House, guaranteed. Trump has said, even as recent as this weekend, Ryan said he won't mess with Medicare or Social Security. If you run in House districts across the country on immigration and the problem of jobs, if you run on trade deals and the problem of trade deals, he's not going to lose more House seats in California because he does a hard deal on NAFTA. But he's going to get more in Wisconsin and Michigan, I think. So I agree with you on that. But I think what's going to happen is Trump is going to steer people towards things that are populist in a popular way, and Ryan is trying to steer them. Look, a huge tax cut is what I think you'll see McConnell and Ryan and even Schumer coalesce around. Remember, Schumer's from Wall Street. He's a New Yorker. So big tax cuts are going to be good for everybody. But I can tell you, I don't think Trump will fall for, let's go and do something to Social Security, privatize it, means test it. I don't think the voters want that. We can talk about the policy. So I think, and I think Trump is better at that. And look, he did yield. He could have gotten Ryan out as Speaker. Instead, he cut a deal. He said, you stay there. I'd rather work with you. That was a big moment. The House Freedom Caucus backed off, and here we are. So I think he's going to play to his strengths. And one of them, by the way, is this foreign policy thing. Americans are tired. Whatever you think of the policy, they're tired of the broad foreign policy in the way we've had it for 15 years.
Okay, you know, Michael, I'm glad that Ed brought up foreign policy. Are the Democrats just going to go default anti-Russia to try to box Trump in? Because that's what it looks like right now. And I noticed that Trump and his team have taken a step back. I'm talking about the intelligence report. How do you read into that? Does he just say, let's move forward? We have to start governing the country? The Democrats and the mainstream media seem to really want to keep honing this story, and it's to everyone's detriment. Go ahead, Michael.
The foreign policy of this country is in such a bad place that whatever Trump does, he almost can't make it worse. The question is, how are we going to interact with the first world countries? I mean, that's really it. How are we going to work with Russia, with Britain, with France, with China and Japan? And these are harder questions. And the policy of disengagement or ignoring them, as the 8 years before Obama took up, are going to be problematic. And I think Trump is going to be less of an interventionist, but he's going to be engaged. And I think that's the problem. He's set up that he's going to deal with ISIS, and that's about all the foreign policy objectives that he's laid out that I am understanding, other than economic ones. And I think that's what it's going to default to eventually, is who can we make a business deal with internationally to benefit the Americans.
Let me go to Hank here. Last 20 seconds, Hank. Can you reflect upon foreign policy? Go ahead.
Obama's foreign policy, absolute disaster. I think Michael is right. The only issue is how you restore integrity to NATO and the economic community in Europe, because that's a direct impact on us. That's first move and number one.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for a fascinating discussion. Many thanks to my guests in Washington, New York, and in St. Louis. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. And remember, Crosstalk rules.
I believe that they will not.